So this is it. After waiting for a week to hopefully find a nice day to record, I eventually decided that it's just not going to happen. So without further ado, I'm going to record this video of Pinkefeld, which is the smaller town where I've been staying. First things first, I'm unfortunately going to be leaving Austria at the end of the week. It's far sooner than I had anticipated, and the reason is that we're going into a pretty strict lockdown in Austria. And as much as I do love sitting alone in a small room by myself without any real friends in the country, not that I could even visit them if I did, I decided it's probably a better idea. Just go home, spend some time with my family, probably get to spend the holidays there, and then come back when the lockdowns are hopefully no longer in effect. But yeah, I'm gonna show you guys around where I've been living, and hopefully it'll be somewhat enjoyable. I know this town better than most in Austria. In spite of having grown up in cities, one thing that I've always really liked is the way that rural communities will just randomly end. So looking down there, you can see over into part of the quote-unquote city of Pinkefeld, more the town of Pinkefeld. And then right here, you have a nice wooded path. So this is usually part of my morning walk. It goes, man, I think over a kilometer. I usually only walk about a kilometer of it. And there are a bunch of different paths. The one I usually take spits you back out on one of the main roads. So I'll be walking it right now. An interesting thing I didn't know about Austria before I came here is that there's actually a lot of hunting. So you can see over there, that's one of the deer blinds. And then you can see this is a pretty good area for shooting. This illustrates the different paths. So even right here, this little area, there are 1, 2, 3 paths. So this one, the one I'm gonna walk up, actually reconnects with this one, though you have to go through a wooded area that was only kind of cleared to get back to it. But that's fun. Makes it feel like real hiking as opposed to just walking on a cleared path. I find this part of the woods particularly creepy because you have a really extended eye line, and that most of the actual trees, or the leaves rather, start up much higher. But also that eye line is broken up by the trees. So it's really easy to picture something out of the corner of your eye coming towards you, which right now in the daylight isn't too bad, but at night, I've walked here once and it was terrifying. The main path ends up there. And this is what I mean by the path you have to go on to get back. If you don't want to just walk back the way you came, it's a little bit less official. So clearly someone drove through here at some point, but there's far more undergrowth on the actual path. There's a lot of poison ivy, which luckily I'm not allergic to, so that's fine for me, but something for someone who's allergic to poison ivy to think about. But yeah, this is the woodiest part. And just like that, we're back to the main path. So this is where we would have come through if we'd gone the other direction back at the fork in the road. That's where we're coming out of. And then up ahead is one of the main roads into Pinkefeld. And here's the official welcome to Pinkefeld that's on one of the main roads. So I guess the most beautiful city in Europe in 2002. And then the Pinkefeld with the red A is their logo for the city. This pond here is called the Eisteich. So ice is obviously cognate with English. And what used to happen in Pinkefeld's earlier days is that this lake or pond, whatever you want to call it, would freeze in the winter, and the locals would come and gather ice to put in the town cellar so they could have ice, I guess, further into the year. Or at least that's what was told to me. This is the Pinkefeld stop on the railway. Unfortunately, there's no more passenger trains to Pinkefeld. The reason for that is it used to be part of the Hungarian line back when Austria was Austro-Hungary and Burgenland was part of Austria. Excuse me, part of Hungary. But today you'll have to take the bus, really, if you want to go anywhere. Like almost every European city or town, Pinkefeld does have a soccer team or football team if you're of the European persuasion. I believe their name is SC Pinkefeld, and from what I understand, they were doing quite well before the lockdown began. But this is their stadium on the other side of the river. One nice thing about Pinkefeld for you sports lovers is that there is a pretty big tennis complex. So I can count at least 6 clay courts over there, which is a pretty good amount, and it's red clay. Yeah, so that's worth checking out. So in this part of town, there are a lot of newer developments. So the biggest thing and the biggest difference between this area of town and the rest of town is the influence of Bauhaus. So Bauhaus is a style of building that originated in Germany in the 1920s, 1930s. And it emphasized form, or rather function over form. So you can see the houses are very plain, they're very blocky, but they're meant to optimize the living space inside. So all around here are a bunch of Bauhaus style buildings that are super newly built to help cope with the growing population in Pinkefeld. You can tell this area is a newer development because to your right, when you're walking, you'll have farm. Up ahead, you'll have farm, and then to your left, you have all these brand new houses. So most of the time when the rural part of the community brushes this close to the more developed part, by which I mean the more urban part, not that anywhere in Pinkefeld is particularly urban, that means that something's a fairly new development and they're trying to find room for it. Up ahead, that green hill, that's the dam for the Pinke River. Now the name of this town is Pinkefeld, so you can probably imagine where that name came from. The Pinke River, or maybe the town named the river, I don't know. In some direction, either the Pinke River was first or Pinkefeld was first, but they share the name. Beyond the dam is a nice little wildlife preserve. So you can see some of the trees right over to the left. Believe it or not, this grassy expanse that stretches all the way over to those trees is the airport for Pinkefeld. So there's no true runway, there's just a hangar and a big grass field. So technically you're not allowed to walk across it because planes could be landing, but I think right now we'd probably be pretty safe in doing it. The airport marks the furthest north point of the entire town. So now I'm going to walk back through town and actually show more of the interior of it, because I spent a lot of the walk in the woods on the last go round. So this is the main street that runs all the way through Pinkefeld, and we'll more or less follow it the entire way through the actual town. If you watched my Graz video, then you'll remember me saying that the crucifixion is everywhere in Austria. So this is yet another example. We're just right off the main road and boom, another crucifixion. As far as I can remember, there are about 5 or 6 of those strewn throughout Pinkefeld in random locations. These apartment buildings across the street, and those behind them as well, also appear to be Bauhaus influenced, but the reason for that is different than the ones that were built over on the other side of town. So these used to be barracks for the army, and now they're being converted little by little into housing for Pinkefeld's expanding population. So I'm sure there's still a Bauhaus influence to the design, but it's more about its history than about the design itself. Straight ahead is the City Museum. I unfortunately was not able to go inside the City Museum as it has been closed for almost the entire time I've been here. But I do know it's one of the older buildings in Pinkefeld, so it makes sense that they selected it as the City Museum. To the extent Pinkefeld has a landmark, I'd say this is the biggest one. So this Pink Church, which has no relation to Pinkefeld, it's just a happy coincidence. But it sticks out over the skyline of Pinkefeld, and it's the best way to orient yourself within the city because you can see it pretty much everywhere. And here's the front of the church. So like most churches in Austria, it's a Catholic church. Austria is overwhelmingly Roman Catholic, and the church itself was built in the 1700s. I believe actually the late 1700s, but still before the Revolutionary War for all you Americans. So it's quite old. Right next to the church is the old fire station. There was a new one built over on the north side of town, sort of where we were earlier. And the old one is going to be converted into a wine bar, apparently. So something to look forward to. It should be pretty swanky. In front of the City Hall, which is that building right there that says Rat House, there are two, Dankma, what's the word in English? Memorials. So the first one over there is to the war dead from the First and Second World War. And this one right here is a Holocaust Remembrance Memorial. This lovely structure here is the Mariensäule, so the Marian column. Up top it shows a saint holding a child in gold. I don't know much more about it. There's a few things written on the side. I believe someone told me it was built in remembrance of people who died of cholera in Pinkefeld, but that could be totally wrong. This yellow church, the spitting image of the other church we saw earlier, is the Evangelical Church for Pinkefeld. Now, an interesting fact about this church is that the tower you see was not initially there, because in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it was illegal for non-Roman Catholic churches to have bell towers. Now, of course, that's changed because Catholicism is no longer the state religion, so even evangelical churches can have bell towers. And finally, the thing that brought me to this random town in southern Burgenland, the HTL, the technical school in Pinkefeld. So Pinkefeld's actually home to a number of different schools that specialize in different areas. So there's another one I've worked at that focuses on preparing people to work in the hotel industry or in restaurants. There's another one that's for careers in social work, and then this school is for careers in the technical field, so be it designing computers, coding, things like that. It's a pretty large school actually for the size of the town. People bus in from all around. And as you can see over to the left here, they are planning to expand it even. So there's going to be a renovation and expansion of the school. But yeah, that's about it for Pinkefeld. It's not a huge city. It's a town of 6,000 people and one of the smallest states in Austria, so I guess not that much can be expected, but still a very nice place to have lived for the past month.